watching Veracity Hill. Here is your host, Dr. J.
Well, a good day to you, and thanks for joining us here for another episode of Veracity Hill, where we are striving for truth on artificial intelligence and ministry. AI in the pulpit? What is an artificial intelligence? Well, we might think of AI as simply the intelligence that is demonstrated from machines, computers. So we can recognize how a computer can scour the web and come back to us with an answer for a question or a problem that we have, or if we want it to perform a task or function, like compose this bibliography for me, or if you might be a pastor, hey, write a 3-point sermon for me. So we're going to be talking about the pros and cons of AI, and in particular in the context of what it looks like for someone in ministry to be using AI. So I do want to talk about the pros and the cons. There are many cons to AI, and then sort of what approach should Christians have to it. Now, in his book on artificial intelligence, John Lennox, he wrote a book called 2084, Artificial Intelligence and the Future of Humanity. Lennox has this very important distinction when talking about AI. There really are two types of AI. There's AI in the narrow sense, which is the idea of it running a task or a function, a specific tool, if you will. It's like a tool. Then there's sort of this broader sense of AI, this idealist notion that AI will become human and it will replace, in a sense, even human emotions or human companionship, or that it can solve our problems, our grand, big problems. That's a broader sense of AI. And so, my view on this, and whether we want to admit it or not, narrow AI is already here. I mean, it's already doing things, performing tasks for us in this world, that it's already here. So there's no debating its place. We already see its benefit. I think the real issue comes into this broader sense of AI, and I can't help but think of just this last week, Tesla had a release of like future products. It was like a showcase for what the future holds. And these robots came marching out and started talking to humans. And the AI sounded so smooth that I couldn't believe it, because it didn't sound robotic. The answers were quick, and it just sounded like a human. Like you close your eyes and it sounded like a human. Well, as it turns out, I read a news article this morning that an analyst confirmed it was a human on the other side with a microphone talking. So it wasn't quite, we're not quite there yet with Tesla, but I suppose Musk wanted to just envision what the future could look like. But we're still perhaps very far away from that. Ringo, Cat, hello from Scotland. Thanks for tuning in on the live stream today. For Mark, did you write any of this episode with AI? Wink, JK. Actually, for some of the planning, Mark, thanks for your comment there. We did want to test and see how this could possibly work. And so I wanted to demonstrate here momentarily on my computer Chat GPT versus the Gallic monks. And for followers of Veracity Hill, no, I'm an expert on the Gallic monks. Those are 5th century monks from what we call modern day southern France, Roman Gaul. They're commonly accused of being semi-Pelagians, so that's my expertise. I want to talk to ChatGPT to see how well it can communicate the views of the Gallic monks. So we're going to see some challenges, some cons, some downsides there. But first, I do want to talk about the pros of AI. Now, when we think about this, we can think of general pros like, hey, there's a problem in my web code. Find the problem for me and offer a solution. That can be like a big time saver, right, for a programmer. So we can see in a narrow sense the use that AI can have, because it can save time. Time is money. It can save a business money, right? So that's it's a good opportunity. Medical industry, you can input a list of symptoms and it can as best as it's able to, offer a list of diagnoses. And it does this, and it can do this and has done this at a stronger rate than doctors. So like, it's because the machines are interconnected, scouring the web, it's taking all the information that it quote unquote knows, and it offers a solution that is better than what the human can do. So in many respects, it is less prone to error, but in other respects, it is still very much prone to error. And it's also prone to just not being human. It never will replace humans and humanity. Now, how could it help a pastor? Well, like I had mentioned, pastors are very busy people. They're usually burnt out people. Their job is a lifestyle. There's no such thing as a 40-hour work week for a pastor. And so they might consider using AI to save them some time, to draft an outline of a sermon, or to even provide a sermon, write out a sermon in this voice or something like that. There are different types of styles of sermons. You could even tailor and tweak the AI to give you the type of sermon that you want to deliver on a Sunday morning. Now, this can get really crazy because I think there's like this Buddhist robot that tries to act like a priest, but it will never be the same. It'll never be the same as a human because it's absent relationship and it's absent emotion. But let me continue talking about the pros before we get into the cons. And it's likely the case, I think, that there are going to be more cons I'm going to list because I am concerned about the broad sense of AI and what it can do, but I'm very supportive of the narrow sense. So what else can AI offer to pastors and theologians? As a time saver, I think here how much pastors and theologians use Bible software programs like Logos and other types of software, some of its competitors. AI will save you more time than those programs, and it's cheaper. So I can think that this is a very good case use of AI, and whether you're using, whatever type of engine you might be using. I'm commonly going to ChatGPT for a few things myself from time to time. That's what we're going to be using today. So you might hear me say ChatGPT as sort of like the name for the machine. So it's kind of like when we say Kleenex. It's tissue paper, but we call it Kleenex. It's just kind of how it is. All right. So it can save time and money because it can do things faster than what you can do even on Logos. So if I were one of these Bible software companies, I would be really concerned over the success of ChatGPT and other machine learning systems, because they are the next step in that industry. So that's a good case use that I can see for the consumer, and the consumer here being the pastor, the theologian, who's looking to whip up a sermon. Now, one thing that a pastor might also consider doing is if they are needing suggestions for how to solve a problem, a church drama problem, they could even go to ChatGPT and say, hey, what are some theories or tactics for assisting in situation X? Now, this is both a good thing. There's also a bad side to it, but let me talk about the good thing. The good thing could be a pastor who hasn't studied various theories on relationship, psychological interactions with situation X, with certain types of people, and it can use its quote-unquote knowledge of the web and spit back to you, hey, here are 3 different suggestions for how you could approach this subject. So it can sort of act as, I don't want to say a counselor, because that's too human, that's too relational, but it can act as an aggregate of knowledge and offer suggestions for what other people on the web that have posted would suggest. So it can provide a synthesis of tactics for church drama. And they might find that that's very useful as well, because they might not know where to go, especially think like a small town pastor. might not have as many personal relationships with as many people, say as a urban or suburban pastor, and the small town pastor might not know who they could go to talk about some issue. So they might go to the web to search. And now we could use Google and search, but what ChatGPT, where it's better than Google, is that it will give you that synthesis for you. It's in a sense superior. So I can see here that ChatGPT AI can assist in these ministry contexts. And it can even do other church tasks, like craft an announcement letter. Like, let's say you send out an email blast. You can even use AI to form church bulletins, to offer music selections. So there's a wide range of opportunities to use AI as a tool. But there's a big caution here, and we'll talk about this as I get more into the downsides of AI. We cannot become dependent on the tools. Now, one example that seems appropriate here is a Maps app. Perhaps you know people, as do I, who are so dependent on maps that they would get lost if they couldn't have their Maps app. They would be like entirely lost, like incapable of getting themselves home from any place because they don't have a sense of direction. They don't know their place in the world. And so this sense of dependency is really a big downside. And so I can easily see how pastors would become dependent on AI for sermons, because the pastor might all of a sudden start just reading off the script, if you will. You could have ChatGPT write you a script even. So that's really a concern, is dependency on the AI, where we still have to learn as humans. And so we have to have a grasp, a grounding of this knowledge that it's synthesizing for us. Because if we become dependent upon it, then we're not actually learning. We're not growing as people. We're just serving some function, just like a machine. Okay, we become AI. Insofar as we lose that absence of knowledge, we lose the sense of relationship, we lose the emotion if we become dependent on AI. We also would not be aware of its mistakes and errors. So I'll use the opportunity to jump into the mistakes and errors here, but in principle, in theory, what AI does is it scours the web and it brings back the information it thinks you want to know. This doesn't even mean that it's accurate information, because it has no way of determining the grounding of truth. It's simply relaying what it has found on the web. So if a million people were to start writing blog posts and articles at newspapers proposing the flat earth theory, and if you ask AI someday in this hypothetical, is the earth round or flat, AI will come back to you and say that the earth is flat. So that is a huge error. I'm giving this obvious example, but I'm going to get into a meticulous small example here when thinking about the Gallic monks. My favorite subject, talking about human nature and grace. So let's jump into ChatGPT here, and we're going to ask it about the Gallic monks. All right, so how about this? How would a Calvinist interpret, let's see, how could I question this here? The role of divine grace and human nature in John chapter 1. Let's check this out. Okay, in John chapter 1, a Calvinist would interpret the role of divine grace and human nature through the lens of key theological principles, particularly the concepts of total depravity, unconditional election, and irresistible grace. Wow, this sounds like a Calvinist already. So total depravity, Calvinists believe that due to the fall, human nature is fundamentally sinful and incapable of seeking God without divine intervention. Oh, well, actually, non-Calvinists also believe this too. In John 1, 10, 11, where it says that he was in the world and the world was made through him, yet the world did not know him, they would see this as evidence of humanity's spiritual blindness and inability to recognize or accept Christ on its own. Divine grace, the emphasis on divine grace, and so on and so forth. So we can see here it's giving a Calvinist read of John 1. Okay, could you provide a semi-Pelagian interpretation of John 1? Oh, misspelled Pelagian. Let's see. It picked up my misspelling, so that was good. A semi-Pelagian interpretation of John chapter 1 would emphasize the cooperative role of human will alongside divine grace in the process of salvation. Here are some key points from that perspective. Semi-Pelagians believe that while human nature is affected by sin, it is not entirely depraved. They would interpret John 1, 10 to 11, where the world did not recognize Jesus, as indicating that humans have the ability to seek God, albeit imperfectly. The rejection of Christ is seen as a failure to respond to the grace available to them, rather than an inability to do so. Grace as prevenient. Semi-Pelagians often speak of prevenient grace, which is the idea that God's grace goes before and enables individuals to respond to him. I mean, that's interesting because the common definition of semi-Pelagianism is that the humans take the first step devoid of grace, that grace isn't necessary to, quote, enable individuals, according to ChatGPT. In John 1, 12 to 13, when it mentions that those who received him became children of God, a semi-Pelagian would view this as suggesting that while God initiates grace, individuals have the capacity to accept it. I mean, this is not giving the common definition of semi-Pelagianism. So let me play this on for size for ChatGPT. Does semi-Pelagianism believe that God initiates grace, or that man takes the first steps toward salvation apart from grace? Oh, let's see what it says. It emphasizes, semi-Pelagianism holds that God does initiate grace, but it emphasizes that human beings have the ability to respond to that grace through their own efforts or free will. In this view, while divine grace is necessary for salvation, individuals can take the first steps toward God, such as seeking him or exercising faith, in a way that is not entirely dependent on grace. This means that semi-Pelagians believe in cooperative relationship between divine grace and human initiative. God's grace is seen as prevenient, enabling individuals to respond, but it does not negate the responsibility of individuals to make the choice to accept that grace. Therefore, semi-Pelagianism positions itself between Pelagianism and Augustinian thought. Well, so I'm sensing that ChatGPT is equivocating on the use of grace, because in one sense, it's saying that grace is necessary for salvation, but that it's not entirely dependent on grace. So I'm going to ask it, are you equivocating on the type of grace that is necessary? For example, we're going to get into external and internal grace. Let's see what it says. Oh, you're right to point out the distinction between different types of grace. This refers to God's general offer of grace available to all people, which can be seen in the message of the gospel and the universal call to salvation. In semi-Pelagianism, this type of grace is recognized as initiating God's outreach to humanity, enabling individuals to seek God. The internal grace, here we go, let's see what it says. This is more specific and involves a transformative grace that affects a person's heart and will, enabling them to respond positively to God's call. Semi-Pelagians believe that while internal grace is essential for salvation, it is accessible to all who choose to respond to the external grace that God offers. So, here you go. In this framework, semi-Pelagianism does not posit that humans can achieve salvation entirely on their own. Rather, it suggests that God's grace is a necessary starting point. So, basically, I think what it's saying here, it says, while some acknowledge it places emphasis on human responsibility and the ability to respond to God's initiative. Would the semi-Pelagians believe that internal grace is necessary for the first steps of salvation? It's learning from this conversation. Yes, semi-Pelagians would believe that internal grace is necessary for the first steps of salvation. So, this is not the common, proper, formal theological definition of semi-Pelagianism. So in this sense, it is wrong. In another sense, I'm sort of happy that it's wrong. Because if you have watched my episodes on the Gallic monks, I do talk about the doctrine of what I call concurrent grace. It's a both and. And so I do say that the Gallic monks would not have been semi-Pelagians in the formal sense. So I think the label semi-Pelagian is sort of a boogeyman. And but so here's the concern, is that as a tool, AI here can be a little helpful, but you don't know if it's telling you the truth. You don't know that it's telling you the truth. It's capable. There's a distinction between capability and credibility. It's capable of telling you the truth, but it's not credible enough for you to have a robust sense of certainty that what it's telling you is accurate. And so that's a big concern for pastors and theologians in utilizing AI. Because, again, those who have studied this issue of semi-Pelagianism will see it is offering a different take on the theological literature. So that's where ChatGPT is mistaken. Let's ask it about the Gallic monks here. Were the Gallic monks semi-Pelagian? I bet you it's going to offer a mixed response. That's my guess. Oh, there you go. Maybe not. Yes, the Gallic monks, particularly those associated with the theological debates in the early 5th century, are often identified with semi-Pelagianism. This group, especially figures like John Cassian, emphasized the cooperative nature of grace and free will in salvation. But again, the idea of emphasizing the cooperative nature of grace and free will in salvation, that's not so much the semi-Pelagian definition. The Gallic monks believed that while God's grace is essential, individuals have the capacity to take the initial steps toward God and make choices that lead to salvation. They argued against the more deterministic views of Augustine, which asserted that grace is solely responsible for any good action, and that humans are entirely dependent on it for salvation. Now, I've read excerpts and selections from Cassian's conferences that talk about the necessity of God's grace for every good action. I mean, explicitly so. And so in this sense, again, ChatGPT, it's just not good enough. I mean, I can provide excerpts from the conferences where John is clear that divine grace is necessary for every good act that humans do, which ChatGPT is ascribing as the Augustinian position. But Augustine separates nature and grace. You see this multiple times in his writings, in his letters. It's an either-or distinction for him. He's trying to figure out which one comes first, even logically first. And so there's already an issue happening here between ChatGPT and a proper understanding of Augustine's view and of Cassian's view. So you can see here that there's capability with AI, but there's not credibility. So that's a warning to pastors and theologians in using AI. We just can't become dependent on it. Another downside is it simply lacks the human emotion, the human relationship, and so it'll never serve as a solution, a long-term solution for ministry. It's just incomparable. You cannot become AI if you're a pastor. You cannot strive to reflect what it does. We are not machines. Humans are not machines. So AI will never be able to give you tone in your sermon. even AI's writing tone, we are perhaps supplying ourselves when we interpret it. And so we just can't depend on it, and it can't communicate to us in a way that's reflective of those broad senses of where some people want it to go. Okay, Mark says, open the pod bay doors, Kurt. Yeah, I get the movie reference there, Cap. Thank you so much. I was thinking about another movie as well, but I'm forgetting. Maybe it'll come back to me. Drew says, AI can teach you, but it can't love you. Therefore, it cannot replace the pastor. Yes, but as I'm showing here, AI might not even be able to teach you. So what it's communicating to me here about semi-Pelagianism and John Cassian's views and Augustine's views are not accurate. The distinction is not strong enough, and it's not accurate enough. So it's not teaching an accurate historical theology here. I would view it as, in some ways right now it's like worse than Wikipedia. Wikipedia is human edited, of course. But on this particular subject, now granted I'm an expert on the Gallic monks, so I've spent years reading, studying even almost all of the secondary literature, the primary sources, of course, and the secondary literature. So I know this subject like the back of my hand. Now, other subjects I wouldn't know, so I might not be able to detect to the level that is required whether ChatGPT is telling me the truth or not. So that's what I'm suggesting here, is that we should be a little cautious on it teaching us. Now, I think we can use it still as a tool. Think of it like a tool, like a hammer, a drill. It can perform certain tasks like a tool can. So teaching, I'm very cautious of and might even warn against. But as a tool, synthesize this or draft a pamphlet from this. Like I said earlier, make an announcement. How would you make an announcement? Or even an outline, draft an outline. An outline is like talking points. And then the pastor could come in and, kind of fill out what those talking points or the outline is. So I would view AI as a tool. And if it's seen as that, then we hopefully won't become dependent on it either. It'll continue to be a time saver, but it won't become what we need to do. So we need to deliver a sermon. It cannot deliver a sermon. Now also think of like the actual sermon delivery. So AI should never replace the pastor. Imagine a robotic voice delivering a sermon. That means it should mean nothing to people because it's simply spitting out without discernment, without care or love for the individuals. It's spitting out ones and zeros that it found on the web. And that's all it's doing. When we have relationships with humans, we can even sense when humans are being disingenuous. We can sense when a human is lacking emotion and just going through the motions. In this sense, they are sort of robotic. And we don't like it. If someone's telling me something simply because they think it's what I want to hear, that's a problem. It's the same sort of thing. So we cannot have the itching ears of what AI is telling us, right? So the pastor would have the itching ears. Tell me what I want to hear when I want you to do this. We would be at fault. We would be sinning then if we're using AI in that way. So that's when we get this dependency and when we move from the narrow sense sort of to a moderate sense before a broad sense. You might reject the broad sense of AI, but it might become a moderate sense that we have those itching ears now because we're so dependent on AI telling us what we want to hear rather than what the truth is or what we need to hear. And that's a problem. So that's a big problem for pastors, for theologians, when we become dependent on it and we become addicted to it. And in that sense, we come to it to solve our problems. That's another, if we become so dependent on it that it's problem solving and we depend on that. That's an idol now. We've also made AI into an idol rather than the creator God of the universe. So we can see how AI can quickly go from a tool that can be utilized for good, and a lot of good, time-saving good. We see it as a tool, but we can move very quickly into idolatry with AI. All right, we've got some folks in the live chat talking about WALL-E, a robotic voice delivering us sounds like WALL-E. Yeah, it's been a while since I've watched WALL-E, nice little Disney Pixar film there. But yeah, that's the idea, that the humans become so entirely dependent on the tech that they're out of shape and they've lost sort of sense of humanity. That also reminds me, maybe that's what I was thinking of earlier when Mark brought up the movie reference. But there was in the new Doctor Who, there was an episode where some of the newest Doctor Who, there was an episode where there were young people living in this town. They were like college age, and they were so dependent on social media. Like it was a big, huge social media episode. They were so dependent on it and the instructions that AI would tell them what to do, where to walk, how many steps it was, where to go, and that they didn't see it was like this, I think it was like a worm-eating villain, multiple worms, they're like giant worms, eating the people alive. And they were so enveloped in the AI tech that they didn't see the problem before their very eyes. Same sort of problem here with the broad sense that AI can be a problem because we're missing the people that are suffering, actually suffering. We become, into the tech-verse, if you will, and AI can take us there, and we can lose ourselves in the tech world while forgetting about the people suffering in the real world. So it's like classic escapism. That's another problem. And if that happens to pastors, then they're really failing at their jobs because you're no longer loving people. You're using AI to escape from genuine relationships. So that's another problem that we have. Mark says that WALL-E is personally his favorite Disney Pixar movie. I'll have to think about what my favorite Disney Pixar film is. I really like Up. That's a nice classic one. My wedding was Up themed, which was fun. The wedding reception, not so much the wedding ceremony itself. Okay, so yes, we're devolving into now a discussion in the chat about favorite Disney Pixar films. We could also ask ChatGPT. Here you go. What is the best Disney Pixar film? And then you guys can just fight along with here. Choosing the best Disney Pixar film can be quite subjective, ChatGPT says, as it often depends on personal preferences. However, several films frequently stand out in discussions. So then we can ask it, why do these films stand out in discussions? See, it's just scouring the web, finding that these are the most talked about. Here you go. Innovative storytelling, memorable characters, universal themes, technical achievement, cultural impact, emotional depth. But ChatGPT doesn't understand emotion. It understands that emotions are good, but it doesn't actually know emotions. It just knows ones and zeros. So there is no agent here. There is no independent creature that is thinking for itself. It's not sentient. So it's still, I don't know that it'll ever will become sentient. If it did, we're all dead already. I mean, if that's the case. Because you think Terminator, right? This is the Terminator series. That Skynet becomes sentient and the robots, the machines take over. They realize that. You also get this with Marvel and Ultron, that humans are the problem. The AI determines that humans are the cause of suffering in the world, and so it needs to get rid of the humans. So that's, multiple series and plot lines in various works of fiction recognize the concern over AI. So it's really a question in the long run, can humans, and how long can humans control AI for? So trippy, sippy. Why are we talking about those types of movies made by those people for those people? I mean, that's a quick judgment there, Trippy. I'm not sure I'd go so far, but I appreciate you watching the stream and discussion about AI. How did we get onto the... Oh, because WALL-E. This got started talking about WALL-E because humans became so dependent on machines that they got out of shape and they really lost their sense of humanity. They lost a sense of nature. And so it's been a while since I've watched WALL-E. There's probably other shortcomings and problems that occurred with the humans and technology. So there's plenty of film, TV, fiction that in an attractive and entertaining way deals with the concerns over AI. So many out there, more than we can really list. So as I've said, I recognize how AI in the narrow sense can serve as a tool, a really useful tool, a good tool for pastors and theologians to use. But we also can see many concerns over it, with it, how it's used, how pastors use it, how they might become dependent on it. Because, when we think about the application here, we give all these examples and applications, but really we want to sort of leave with a few, a couple points in thinking about the application here. So what a pastor and a theologian needs to recognize is that our lives need to be rooted in the ethics of love. And ChatGPT cannot do that. Not even close. So we need to be thinking about how technology can be used as a tool for love. Again, you might save someone time. You can solve a problem. You can help do accounting with AI. So you can obviously see how these things can be applied to love someone. But we also need to have discernment and be wise here in recognizing the shortcomings and pitfalls of AI. And so we do not want to be dependent on it. We do not want to be addicted to it. That's a huge concern. I mean, we're just seeing how addicted people are to social media. And I can easily see how addicted, how dependent, how idolatrous even AI can become for leaders in ministry and in ministry contexts. The last thing we want is for pastors to lose their sense of knowledge. In a moment when you're talking to someone, they're depending upon you to offer advice. The last thing you want to do is say, "Oh, let me go check ChatGPT for an answer, and I'll get back to you." That is not what someone wants to hear. They're not looking for an answer from a machine. They're looking for someone to listen. So that's really, we need to be discerning and wise in our interactions. And last, I think we should reflect on the hope beyond technology. One of the problems with the broad sense of AI and embracing and pursuit of broad AI is it's misguided hope. It's hope that the technology is going to solve all of humanity's great existential problems. But that hope is only found in Jesus Christ. He is the hope of glory. It is through Christ as the Savior of the world and through God's grace working in the church that humanity will find its salvation, not in technology. All right, so that's really my thoughts on AI. Again, I've fully recognized there are strengths, there are weaknesses, there are big concerns, and we should proceed with a lot of caution. But don't be afraid to check out AI and go to chatgpt.com. You can check out how it can be used as a tool. It's still struggling. It's still sort of in its infancy. And we can't, even though it's capable, it's not credible. So if you can find when it is capable, then great. Maybe it'll save you 20 minutes on that task. Maybe it'll find that web code error for you. Some pastors, they might run their own websites. Or if they have someone, websites for their church, or if they have someone on their team that does the web work, you can have them use AI to help solve these problems. So that's, plenty of case uses here for a successful use of AI. But we have to be cautious so that we don't trend into the moderate sense and certainly not the broad sense of using AI to solve our problems. Okay, well, that does it for the show today. I know it's sort of a shorter episode, but I just wanted to share my thoughts on AI since it's been in the news recently, and there's sort of this broader question, even in the apologetics world, about a Christian's relationship to AI. How should we engage with this ever-continuing, expansive technology? And again, we see all those case uses I talked about. Well, I'm grateful for the partnership that we have with our patrons. Patrons are folks that just chip in a few bucks each month. If you want to support this program, you like sort of the content that comes to you week in, week out, multiple videos a week coming out on Veracity Hill. We're in a short season right now where we've got, really sometimes one, maybe two videos coming out. Our video editor, Gabe's working on a big, huge project. Once he's done, we'll be churning out even more videos each week on the Veracity Hill YouTube channel. And so we are really grateful for those supporters of ours who help to make this ministry sustainable. If you want to learn how you can become a supporter of Veracity Hill, go to veracityhill.com/donate to start your partnership today. I'm also grateful for the partnerships that we have with our sponsors, Defenders Media, apologetics315.com, and Rethinking Hell. I want to thank the technical producer, Gabe, for his fine work in the live stream, for our media associate, Mark, who helps craft the thumbnail images and puts out on social media what the topic for the show is. And he also embeds the episode in our website. So I'm grateful for the work that Mark does week in, week out for this ministry. And last but certainly not least, I want to thank you for watching and for listening in as we strive for truth on artificial intelligence.
This has been Veracity Hill, a viewer and listener supported program. For more resources, including past shows, visit veracityhill.com.